So hi, my name is Amit Gupta, and I'll talk about my journey with diabetes as well as the lessons that I learned. So first, a little bit about myself. So I'm an engineer by training. I studied in the 90s, did a lot of engineering work also in the same decade. Then starting in early 1999, I switched over to entrepreneurship, founded a couple of companies. And for me, everything changed on this one day that's marked here, the 27th of July. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So when the day started, I was really feeling like I was on the top of the world. The company that I had co-founded, it had raised its Series C. We were executing well on our business plan. We were market leaders in our space, growing 100% year over year, planning our IPO. Things couldn't be better. Then I developed some chest pains on that day, so I decided to go to the ER. Well, the doctors did their test, and they told me, well, the good news is we don't see any issues with your heart. It's just fine. The bad news is that your blood sugar is really high. In fact, my blood glucose level was 296. And if you remember, Dr. Malti said the fasting sugar should be under 100 and it should probably not go below above 140, 150 max. So I was like more than 2x over. And they asked me, do you know that you have diabetes? I did not know that. In terms of my A1C, as measured that day, was 10.8. And as Dr. Srinivasan said, anything above 6.5 is considered diabetic. So I was way over the limit. Well, it turns out that in the last few decades, while I was pursuing my career success, I'd kind of neglected my health. And this landed me in a deep hole. So I had to kind of step back, reprioritize my health. And with the few changes I made, I got my A1C back to the 6.3, 6.4 range. But then again, it started to climb up again. And in early 2019, it reached 7.4. It was at that time that my doctor recommended that I start injecting insulin, and which was something I was a little bit afraid of and I didn't really want to do. So that really was my second wake-up call. So that is when I decided to get serious. So I talked to multiple medical practitioners, I read a lot, and started making lifestyle changes. And combined, these changes got me to an A1C of 5.5. And if you remember, 5 years before, I was at 10.8. It's almost a reduction by half A1C. So what are the main changes I made? So the number one was on my diet. I decided to do low carb. I decided to eat whole foods. And I also eliminated seed oils. And I also started doing intermittent fasting. And for the people that may not be aware of this, intermittent fasting is where you eat in a short time window every day. So in my case, I was doing what's called 18-6 intermittent fasting, which means I would eat in a 6-hour window, but not eat for 18 hours after that. So that is my diet plan. In terms of exercise, I was doing resistance training 2 to 3 hours every week. And then I was measuring everything. I measured my weight, I measured my resting heart rate, my glucose levels, my heart rate variability. I got a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, to measure my blood sugar. I download it religiously every single day to my computer, analyze it in different ways, figure out what was causing my blood sugar to go up, and then make changes. And it was this constant loop of measuring, analyzing, and acting that is responsible for my A1C drop down to where it dropped down. So now that was a journey, but now I want to take a few minutes to talk about the lessons I learned along the way. And I'm hopeful that some of these lessons will be useful for you as well. Okay. So the first thing I want to kind of emphasize is, and as Dr. Srinivasan also said, it takes a long time. So while for me, July 27th was the date I found out, turns out that my metabolism had been messed up for a while before. And in fact, what I did is I went back and got all of my medical records going back 2 decades. And back in 1997, when I looked at the records, they clearly indicated there's from the lipid panel, the markers for triglycerides and HDL, and their ratio is strongly indicated. And my ratio was very high, it was almost 6. And that's a very good indicator that I just completely missed. And unfortunately, the reality is that most regular PCPs are not as aware of this. So I strongly recommend going to physicians that specialize in healthcare for South Asians. As Dr. Srinivasan said, we are at dramatically higher risk for a variety of reasons. And there are some really good centers in the Bay Area, including at Stanford, at Sutter, as well as at the South Asian Heart Center. All of them have got really good people. I would strongly recommend you go there. The other thing to also kind of remember is that a lot of times when you hear these stories, you have the stories of the success, but what you don't see is it's not a straight line. So things improve, then you kind of go down a little bit, you take a step back, and then you come up again. The important thing is that you have to continue believing that the goal is worth achieving, the goal is worth fighting for, and even if there's some small setbacks, they can't derail your overall progress towards a goal. So don't get discouraged if from time to time the numbers start going the wrong direction. That's normal. This can come over it. The other thing also is there are many, many different opinions about what works. So there's the low carb community, there's the low fat community, there's plant-based, there's carnivore, there's keto, there's whole foods. The people advocating many small B's, the people advocating intermittent fasting. And my belief is that all of us are fairly different and different things work for different people. And really all you need to do is to experiment, try out different things, see what works for you, and whatever works for you is what you should do. And ultimately the best plan is the plan that you can stick to. And for me personally, using the CGM was a complete game changer. As one data point, so you see this massive spike where my blood sugar went over 200. Turns out that that was the day I had some idlis. And unfortunately, I am one of the about 10% of the population which have this kind of high glucose reaction to rice. And I only learned that a lot later, but thanks to using a CGM, I figured out that that was a reaction that rice was causing for me. And from that point on, I decided not to eat any more rice. Now, this is the kind of stuff that worked for me. Similarly, by using a CGM, you can also find out what works for you and make the changes. Now, what I also did is I wrote a few articles about my own journey, along with the different tests I used to get better. And all this information is available online. I'm including the link here. You can also search for these terms. Happy to answer any questions you may have about this. And that's my story. Thank you.